4.05. It's not loading. Motion to approve of secondary summer school as presented and recommended by Education Committee. Any questions? All right, move to consent, please. 4.06, the motion to approval of online credits from Edisir or Montgomery virtual program combined with affirmation of participation in regularly scheduled advising sessions with a PV instructor as fulfillment of credit recovery requirements of PVSD 2022 secondary summer school. Questions? Okay, move to consent, please. 4.07 is a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to allow a non-resident senior who has met the requirements of policy 202 to conclude the 2021-2022 school year at PV High School. Any questions? All right, move that to consent too as well. 4.08, motion to approve the allocations for the American Rescue Plan ESSER Fund, Homeless Children and Youth funds as presented. It's $14,989. Any questions? All right, move to consent. 4.09 is a placeholder holder. That ends my section.
Thank you very much. Dr. Campley, business?
Yes, 5.01, a finance update from Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We have a quick finance update, so we'll move right into there. If I can, there we go. Okay, so we have a quick budget update as far as where we stand tonight, and a little bit of commentary that goes along with that so that we can understand where we're at. We do have the results of the auditor RFP and a recommendation. Athletic trainer results we have received, but we're still going through them. We'll get into that. Recommendation on real estate tax payments and the going back to a pre-pandemic possibility. You see the multiple listings there for the school board motions, and then we'll have a quick update on the fitness equipment as well. There's a board motion for that as well. So, next slide, please. There we go. Okay. So, quickly, there is a full budgetary presentation included for the school board as well on board docs. We've made several changes, mostly on the expenditure side of things. We've recognized a property tax rebate program reduction based upon the number of participants we've had the past couple of years. We are reducing our STA contract from a 3% holder that we had in there down to the actual contract amount of 2.5%. So that shows some savings there. We do have a VOTEC final budget. We did have an initial number in there, and now that it's confirmed to be $35,000, it's actual reduction for us. And then we actually have an increase for the athletic budget as presented in the Finance Committee as part and parcel of the overall process. Right now, that leads us to a $4.461 million shortfall. The current calculations up on the upper right-hand corner show a 5.94% increase overall. And you can see on the lower right-hand corner conversation pieces as we establish goals and criteria moving forward towards final budget approval. Dr. Russell, if you were to, there we go. So a couple of notes on, thank you, the general fund side of things. So I'm not as nervous as it would appear at a 5.94% in a March presentation. First and foremost, we have a Bucksmont second look that actually came in at a negative 5%. So to put that into perspective, we went out with a plus 6%, which is trend and analysis data historical perspective. That added $587,000 to that number that you see there. The fact that it's a negative number would actually result in a swing of almost $1 million to be reduced. Now, Mr. Moran and I do have a conversation in the meeting set up with our Bucksmont people to review that number to make sure that that's correct, because there's a lot of numbers that go into that from the background groups on how they calculate. Remember, they're also budgeting and forecasting as well. And the second idea is that there is a third look as well. On occasion in the third look, we have seen slight increases. Now, even a slight increase at a negative 5.2% would still lend you to say that it's going to be a negative of some sort. So that's a positive. We could easily remove $587,000 that we put already put into the budget, and show that at a 0% increase, and that would positively impact our shortfall. Second item, as Mrs. Smith just mentioned, our staffing process. We're actually pleased that the school board allows us to move forward with this process. It really helps when we put numbers in the budget and then we work throughout the entire budget year to ascertain enrollment, programmatic changes, all of those things that go into those final numbers for budgetary perspective. So finalization of staffing, as we just talked about, would be a positive influence because now we've got the 5 positions in there. Remember, the other half a position that Mrs. Smith mentioned was going to be used by staffing changes anyway, so that was not a budgetary impact, so to speak. So that, in addition to the Viking Academy conversation piece, K through 5 being removed or adjusted, would actually reduce those even more. True-up costs, we still have $370,851 out there. As part of that true-up cost, again, because the school board allows us to move forward with this process and actually utilize this as a hedge moving forward, that would be an additional deduction if and when we actually get to that point in time to remove those true-up costs. Remember, the governor's proposal went out. It promised a lot of good things. There were a lot of good positive functions in there. Right now, we have 0 increases for our SB, and our special education subsidy is based upon actuals from 2021, or from 2021, yes, as audited. So we don't anticipate that number would go down. We do anticipate that there will be some sort of a growth perspective for the SB and the special education. We just haven't shown it at this point in time. In talking to our colleagues and our peers, other business administrators, most are sticking to the 0 until the rubber hits the road and we hear something out of Harrisburg. Right now, all's quiet in Harrisburg, which should really scare everybody. It sure scares us because we're not quite sure how those talks behind the scenes are progressing. We continue to review wants versus needs. And remember, in the general fund projection, which will come up in April, that will tie into the conversation of the use of unassigned fund balances. The past 2 years, for instance, in unassigned fund balance, we used $1.5 million of the unassigned fund balance as a measurement to help us reduce our overall budget tax increase that we've asked for the past 2 years. So I am not concerned at this point in time, and I don't want to relay that I am concerned, but 5.94% is a pretty high number as far as our budget processes go. But we do have different multiples that we continue to watch. Thank you, Dr. Russell. Any questions on the budget? Okay, so our 3-year contract with BBD LLP, Mr. Carl Hogan, ran out. So we had an active RFP that we put out in the streets. We did advertise 3 consecutive weeks. Unfortunately, we only received 2 quotes back. And the main reason is we did have conversation with the 3 companies that did not respond. And basically, they're status quo. They're struggling as well with their own personnel. And so they're unwilling to go out and put a number down and to move forward, especially with a 5-year bid that we had out on the streets. So when we received the results, Mrs. Hurd and I went through them. We summarized them. BBD LLP is the low bid. We do have experience with them, and we are recommending that we move forward with a 5-year contract with BBD LLP. Any questions? Okay, thank you. The athletic trainer RFP results. I did state earlier we did receive those athletic trainer results. Similar fashion, we sent 5 out. We did advertise 3 consecutive weeks again per procurement guidelines. Part of this process was we did add an additional person instead of just the 2. We asked for a 3rd person and an athletic trainer head to be present as part of that process. Mr. Felting, I'm showing you the summary results. It always scares us when we look at the dollar figures and there is such a spread between number 1 and number 2 and number 3. So Mr. Felty and I need to gather. We need to go into the guts of the RFP and what each one of these vendors have provided. Follow up. We will do that over the course of the next week, and we'll hopefully have something back for the school board to consider. So we do not have a recommendation at this point in time on this. We've got some work to do on this. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you. Next topic, property tax bills. Remember pre-pandemic when we had a 60-day discount period, and we had a 60-day flat period, and we had a 60-day penalty period. Well, when the pandemic hit, we proactively look towards trying to help our taxpayers try to continue to pay their tax bills as we dealt with the inundation of what the potential issues could be with COVID. Over the past 2 years, we've adjusted our framework tax bill timeliness process. We increased our partial tax bill payments from 3 to 4, and we've gone through that process. I'm happy to report, and the reports do certainly substantiate the fact that our taxpayers pay their bills on time, and our school district almost collected 100% the first year and collected 100% this year for our real estate tax bills. So next slide, please. So one of the areas that we're talking about is in the Finance Committee, we did talk about changing up some of the partial payment dates. Right now in Policy 605, the partial payment dates are specifically listed. We would like to change them. We did have tax collectors that did attend our Finance Committee meeting, and they recommended that we change the partial payments while we go from 4 back to 3. We do change those dates to 8/15, 10/15, and 12/15, and they had a pretty good reason, which was specifically the last partial payment. They are getting ready to close out the year because remember, real estate tax bills are due December 31st, and then they have to immediately go to collection by law. So every day that the tax collectors can collect that third partial payment helps our taxpayers and our tax collectors really to have a good record and accounting for the number of bills that they have to send to the county and to Portnoy for collection purposes. So that was the recommendation. The Finance Committee heard that and they did agree with that. So that would be our recommendation. I'm working with Mr. Kyle Berman from Fox Rothschild. Do we do a resolution to move forward with the Policy 605? We are scheduled to talk about the impact of 605 at the next Policy Committee meeting as well. It's a timing issue, so we just have to make sure that we have to have everything in order, and I will continue to work with Mr. Berman. If he does have a recommendation for a resolution for next week, we'll put that out there. Any questions on that? Moving forward, Mrs. Doyle. Ms. Doyle gave us an update on our bond refunding possibility. We continue to work with the dual approach, which is both a bank RFP and an internet auction process to give us the best way to move forward with the potential refunding. She still is of the opinion that our minimum goal of 2% of the total bond refunds or the equivalent of $449,000 is possible. The market, while the market is ramping up as far as interest rates, certain world events are actually helping us because, as I've said before, when bad things happen out in the world, there is a flight to safety and security, and there's nothing more secure than a Pennsylvania school district bond at this particular point in time, especially with our bond rating and our strong financial position. So we continue to be in good shape moving forward. We'll have a parameters resolution that we will present. That is at the Bond Council right now for next week as well to keep moving forward. Any questions on that? Thank you. There's another update with the timing that Ms. Doyle provided to us. Okay, so scoreboard update. So for those of you who attended the Safety and Operations Committee, we have been looking at scoreboards for the lower field and Keenan Stadium. The main purpose for the lower field is because it does not currently have a timing mechanism on it. So it is a multi-purpose field. Lacrosse, soccer, field hockey, all of those sports are timed. Right now we have a little portable timing element that goes out. And so the purpose would be to move forward with a lower field scoreboard to address this issue. This was the scoreboard. We have had representatives from OES. They've been working with Mr. Felty to provide both possibilities with Keenan Stadium and the lower field. We are moving forward with the lower field because we have to work out some details with the Keenan Stadium scoreboard. It was a little bit more money. There has to be advertising in place. There has to be sponsorships in place. But we did recommend from the Finance Committee to move up with the lower field scoreboard. You may see that the scoreboard is listed as $5,674. It is slightly higher because this price was based upon both scoreboards coming in as a package deal. When we broke that package deal and we said we only want one of the scoreboards, then one of the deals with the package was that freight and installation would have been waived. However, now that it's just a single scoreboard, we have to add about $1,100 to that figure. Still a relatively low number for us to do, and still would recommend forward with the members of the Finance Committee and Safety and Operations Committee to support that moving forward for the lower field at this point in time. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you. Moving forward, Mr. Ganesh did provide some updates and requests that you see as more board motions for this month. Middle School East, Middle School West, both auditoriums to receive upgrades for their light, sound, and video for live performances. And also the Middle School West auditorium projector to be put in there as well, basically because there is no projector at West Auditorium. There were a couple of other items that Mr. Ganesh is working on doing some additional work in the back, but this is what has been placed on for the March agenda for school board. Any questions on those? Okay, thank you. Moving forward, the next slide pertains to the fitness equipment. So the fitness equipment, we did budget $50,000 in ESSER monies. Mrs. Smith did verify that new fitness equipment was an allowable expense under the ESSER monies. We did reach out to a different cooperative platform because it is recommended and approved by use for federal monies. And so what this process is this is an adventure to replace or improve the fitness equipment that is in our fitness center. Miss Emily Whitman, our physical education head, department chair, actually handpicked a lot of this equipment and actually worked with the vendor to provide a plan, a scheme associated with what we were going to repair, what we were going to get rid of because it was not repairable, and where we can reuse some of these pieces of equipment. Those lists were delayed, but they are included in the board agenda at this point in time for any follow-up. I know there were some questions and concerns about some of those items from school board members. So hopefully you can read those and you can ask any questions that you have at this point in time on that. Again, it's a little bit less than what we had budgeted for. It was $50,000, and now it's $46,370 with a plan in place to reuse some equipment that we can use, shift them over to East to help offset and to start with fitness over there as well. So that's a lot. I'll answer any questions anybody might have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. 5.02 is grants and donations report. And I lost my screen. Hold on. Grants and donations report in accordance to policy number 702. Should I go through each of them or should I just ask if there's questions? There are a bunch. Okay. So the first one is VR in the classroom. The source is the PV Foundation. It's for the high school in the amount of $299. It's a virtual reality experience is the intended use. It will provide virtual reality environments for use by various curricular areas to allow students to dive deeper into content. Oculus Quest 2 headset to be added to the existing inventory, and the recipient is Dan Pennybacker on behalf of the Viking Genius Bar. The next one is the Perk Up Pin Pals. Again, the PV Foundation is the source for the high school in the amount of $481 in order to develop job employability skills. The notes here are to establish a new vocational opportunity for low incident special education students, and the recipient is Ashley Roche on behalf of the Life Skills Program. Spanish Marketplace, the source is also the PV Foundation at the high school in the amount of $500. The intended use is cultural experience, opportunity for Spanish students to experience culture in a hands-on manner. Tracy Sutton, on behalf of PVHS Spanish Program, was the recipient. The PV Foundation also gave a donation for the Planting Seeds for Success program. This is at South Elementary School in the amount of $500. The intended use is to plan and plant a garden. Students will plant a garden, plant seeds, and watch it grow, making connections to the science curriculum. The recipient is Bernadette Maston on behalf of South K through 5 teachers. The traveling yoga mats was also from the PV Foundation at the high school in the amount of $500. The intended use is for mindfulness and yoga. It assists in the implementation of mindfulness and yoga within district curriculum in flexible spaces. Karen Molliver, on behalf of PVHS Health and PE staff, was the recipient. There is a Wellness Challenge prizes, also given by the PV Foundation to Schwenksville Elementary in the amount of $500. The intended use is for incentives and prizes, to provide incentive prizes for Schwenksville students and staff participation in the Pottstown Wellness Challenge. The recipient was Patty Colucci on behalf of district social workers. And the final one was the robotics team, also from the PV Foundation at the high school in the amount of $500. The intended use is robotics parts to purchase of a Limelight to incorporate into the team's robot for competition. And the recipient was the robotics team, Mr. Moss. Any questions? Then we will move on to 5.03, approval of the 22-23 holidays for the 12-month employees. There's a motion to approve the list of holidays for 12-month administrative and support staff for the 2022-2023 fiscal year as listed. Are there any questions? If not, we'll move to consent. Next is 5.04. This is a motion to approve the 2022-2023 school board meeting dates as listed. Any questions? Yes, Sarah.
I just want to confirm that we double checked all these to make sure they don't fall on any holidays.
Did I make a face? I'm sorry. I want to double check that though. I mean, we did discuss that in our planning session, but let me double check that to make sure, because I do appreciate you bringing that up. We'll follow up with any changes in the event we need them.
So should we hold that, or is it still moving to consent?
You could put it on consent and then take it off if there needs to be a change.
Okay, we'll move to consent unless there's some change that you bring up next week. 5.05, this is a motion to ratify special education contracts and costs of services for the 2021-2022 school year to meet requirements of students' IEPs through out-of-district placements and special services provided to students within our district programs. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to consent. 5.06 is a motion for approval to implement upgrades to the live performance systems in the middle school east and west auditoriums at a cost not to exceed $4,000 as recommended by the Safety and Operations Committee. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move that one to consent as well. 5.07 is a motion to approve the ZNH Technologies to install a new projector in the middle school west auditorium at a cost of $19,178 as recommended by the Safety and Operations Committee. Any questions? Moving to consent. 5.08 is a motion to approve a contract with BBD LLP for auditing services for the 2021, 2022, 2022, 2023, 2023, 2024, 2024, 2025, and the 2025-2026 fiscal years at a cost of $18,500 for 1 year, $18,800 for year 2, $19,000 for years 3 and 4, and $19,300 for year 5 as recommended by the Finance Committee. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move to consent. 5.09 is a motion to purchase a multi-sport scoreboard from OES Scoreboards for the lower baseball field at a cost not to exceed $6,774 as recommended by the Safety and Operations Committee. Procurement platform is TIPS, the Interlocal Purchasing System, contract number 19090201. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move to consent. 5.10 is a motion to purchase fitness equipment from Matrix Fitness Equipment Webster Fitness Products Incorporated at a cost not to exceed $46,400. This includes freight and installation as recommended by the Finance Committee and Education Committee. Any questions? Mrs. Brockett.
I just ask that we leave this off consent. I said it in finance. I don't believe that this is the best use of our ESSER funds. I'd rather see our ESSER funds used specifically towards learning loss or health and wellness, or mental health.
So can we hold it? How does that work?
It's, yeah.
So it's just
It'll
off, as
still
long
be
as we have one.
on for
Okay,
consent.
wasn't sure. All right, so we will take that off of consent. Thank you, Mrs. Brockett. Moving to 5.11, this is a placeholder. 5.12 is also a placeholder. And 5.13 is a motion to approve the debt incurring resolution as prepared by bond counsel. Any questions? Seeing none, move to,
Say that wouldn't be on consent because you don't have the.
oh, that's,
Leave
and
that
that's
off
for March
consent.
14th, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you
That
very,
is it.
thank you, Dr. Campley. Payment of bills, Mr. Keenan.
6.01, next week we will go over the bills, and also 6.02, next week we will go over the treasurer's report and financial statements.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Professional personnel, Dr. Kolar.
Thank you, Mr. Saylor. Items 7.01 through 7.08 are all on consent. Item 7.09 is a motion to approve the creation of 2 additional special education positions at the secondary level as part of the PVEA agreement. Any discussion? We will move that to consent. 7.10 is a motion to approve the creation of an instructional coach position district-wide as part of the PVEA agreement. Any discussion? We will put that on consent. 7.11 is a motion to approve the creation of an autistic support position at the secondary level as part of the PVEA agreement. Any discussion? Put that on consent. 7.12, a motion to approve the creation of an MTSS facilitator position at the secondary level as part of the PVEA agreement. Any discussion? Move that to consent. And 7.13 is a motion to approve the creation of a .5 English language development position district-wide as part of the PVEA agreement. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move that to consent, and that concludes section 7.
Thank you, Dr. Kolar. Support personnel, Ms. Evans Brockett.
Thank you, Mr. Saylor. All items under section 8 are on consent.
Thank you, Ms. Evans Brockett. And governance, Mr. Fountain.
Thank you. Item number 901 is the first reading of policy is 608, 609, 615, 617, 618, 626.1, 710, 812, and 813. Item 902, motion to hold a second reading and adopt the following policies: 006, 108, 109, 110, 234, 610,
611, 626, and 816. Any questions on any of those? So that could be moved to consent. Item 903, motion to approve an exception to policy 202, eligibility of non-residential students to allow a family with an agreement of sale to attend PV from mid-April through September 1, 2022 as non-resident students beyond the 60 days as indicated in the policy. Any questions? Move that to consent, and that concludes my section.
Thank you, Mr. Fountain. If you are on Zoom and you would like to talk, please raise your hand function. Are there any comments from the audience?
I have the pleasure,
Please announce yourself.
I'm Ashley Bruce, Fairfax Township. I have the pleasure, for lack of better words, of reading some books in your library. And I'm going to read this one out loud because this is for our students.
Sam's eyes rose to mine. There was something like lust in them, but also something like regret. Sam got under the covers and slipped off his pants again. Jim took the remote from Mac's sleeping hand and switched from the news to the first movie he could find. Jim and I had not had sex in almost 3 weeks. We fucked many times, even after I found out about Lucinda, but that was because I wanted to not care about it. Now it was obviously I did, so we couldn't. When we woke up, Jim was facing my back. Sorry. Which curved away so that only my ass touched his hands. My left arm was over Sam's collarbone. He was breathing faster than anyone, still asleep. I instantly felt sickened by his foul breath. My hair was still not dry, but I removed myself from the men, that's plural, and started to shower. I remember Sam's face after my question about his girlfriend. Of course he had one. I've met so many women like me who have been lied to consistently about big, tangible things. Men always find out quick. Other women tell them. Women tell anyone anything. That's what I want. Everything to be out in the open, right? Women are honest, but men are loyal. I tried to untangle my thoughts under the hot water. You don't see enough female pedophiles. Older men, especially rich ones, get little girls and little boys. Older women get nothing, or older men. Maybe fame changes everything, and it changes even that. I imagine nuns getting beaten by children, groupies getting pissed on by Led Zeppelin, and a Russian mail-order bride getting fucked by a dog for laughs.
If you could stop the timer for a second. I'm going to stop the timer. Hold on 1 second, please.
I'm almost done.
No, hold on, please. Because I stopped the timer. So in a public setting, you're going to get, and that's why I stopped the timer, you're going to get your 3 minutes. And I do appreciate the fact that you're reading a book that you found in this
our library.
In our library, in our library, correct. And I appreciate the fact. I would just ask that you redact any vulgar language because part of the agreement for...
No, because our kids are reading this.
No.
No,
I
if our kids
understand
can
that.
read this, I can say it. And every single one of you need to hear it. Because
understand.
our library book approval process is apparently under, the vote or whatever. So that's why. This is disturbing. I felt my vagina, my finger sliding out without pleasure. I was not wet. The shower couldn't fool me of that. Of course I envy the penis. I turned the water off and knelt. A chunk of the mauvish nail polish chipped off and flattened against the drain. I can finish this, but every one of those books has sexual content. Every one of those books has profanity. Every one of those books puts a child in a bucket with a label, and every one of you approve them. Every single one of you are responsible for the hate, the division, the disruptive behavior. This is under new books. Look how exciting they are. I dare all of you to pick one of those books and read it. Go home and come back here next week and tell me it's not disturbing. Your problem is that you push politics down the throats of children, and then you want to stop parents from reading them out loud because there's profanity in it. No. That whole bookshelf needs to be taken down, and it needs to be read.
Anyone else in the building? Yes, sir.
Keith Fry, Lower Frederick. That's tough to follow. But I still want to stick with the COVID and the masking of the children. And I want to sort of talk about the COVID hub that Dr. Russell spoke about. You spoke about how they're changing the metrics now, which I follow as well. I've been following this chart since it came out, since the beginning of the school year, since September. I've charted it. I have an Excel spreadsheet on it. If you start to do the math, these numbers that they put out, they seem outrageous. Even when we are at our highest point, the incident rate was 926, but that's per 100,000 people. Our school is only 5,800. Our whole Perkiomen Valley area is only 39,900. If you do the math and you break it out, we're not even talking about 1%. It's 0.92% of the Perkiomen Valley School District that tested positive for COVID. Still doesn't even mean that they're deadly sick. We still don't see children being hurt by COVID. So going forward, I respectfully disagree with you, Dr. Russell, on trying to approve a health and safety plan that's going to follow this new guidance by Montgomery County, which is talking about hospitalization. We're concerned about kids in this school district, children that really aren't getting sick by this. Now you want to follow a metric about elderly people going to hospital. Montgomery County can show you the stats that old people are going, and the majority of them are over the age of 60 going to the hospital. The majority of deaths are over 60. And now we're going to talk about putting masks back on our kids again if we get into a high level because old people are back in the hospital. I don't know what the plan is, but I hope the board thinks about some sort of metrics. We've been doing metrics this whole time. We've been taking cases and counting them. I've been following them as well on the COVID dashboard. I don't know why we can't implement that. Why don't we just do what our school district? Let's pay attention to our community. If we see our rates going up, then we can start having other discussions. But right now, we're still talking about very small numbers. It's 0%. It's 0.92. It's not even 1% of the people that are getting sick from this. So I hope we can really just think about how we're going to move forward with this plan and not just follow what the Montgomery County is doing or even the CDC. They're not really leading us very well at all. We need to stand up and lead better. Thank you.
Any other comments? Any on Zoom?
No one on Zoom.
And I just wanted to clarify, I was not attempting to censor or prevent Ms. Breeze from reading. We just do have a decorum when we talk about the public comment. So I just wanted to clarify that, I was not trying to censor what she was reading or prevent her from finishing her 3 minutes, which is why I asked Dr. Russell to pause his 3 minutes to ensure that she had the 3 minutes given. We just attempt to have a professional decorum, but I do understand that she was reading a book that she found in the Perkiomen Valley School Library. On that note, we will move on to comments from any board members. I'll go down the line. Are any comments from any board members? I'll start with Ms. Evans-Brockett, Dr. Kolar, Mr. Fountain, Ms. White, Mr. Dorr.
I was hoping that next week when we discuss the money for the fitness equipment, we can have Mr. Stansemarsh here as well as the athletic trainers that'll be using them. I thought Mr. Stansemarsh did a great job of explaining how fitness equipment would help with mental health within the district. Thank you.
Mr. Keenan, Dr. Campley, Ms. Mears.
I just have one in the consent in the resignations. I just wanted to recognize Mrs. Joan Berger, who is resigning from our school district as a high school counselor. We've had personal experience with her, and I know many other students have, and wish her well. Sad to see her go. She's a fantastic asset to our students and to our district, but I hope she enjoys her retirement.
Dr. Russell?
No, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. 10.03, note the policy that we have on the video disclaimer. Looking for a motion for adjournment. So moved. Is there a second? I have a second by Dr. Kolar. She beat you to it, Don. She was quick today. Any negative comments? If not, motion is adjourned. Please note that the board held an executive session at 6 o'clock for the purpose of real estate and legal. Thank you very much. See you guys on Monday.